The difference with filters is that a filter is returned. It's a return value versus an echo value. Basically, yeah, you're filtering content. Let's go back to the presentation. So, what are filters? Let me just pause because I feel like I'm blasting. Did actions, because I can come back to this, but did actions kind of subtle? Was that understandable? Okay, I've seen some head nods. Okay. So it's either going right up to the back or it's nailing in somewhere. A lot of times it's like osmosis. You hear too much, and you go back and you're like, click. I'll say this, actions and filters are something that I've talked with a number of people and they're like, it clicked. It finally made sense. And it's just using it, testing it, playing with it. And that's how it was for me.
Do you have a process that you kind of always go through standard with like standard action that you hit with all your functions? Like, do you always use after setup theme and then build your classes to the correct action later?
I'll only use after theme setup to perform 3 things or 4 things. Initiate a class, and then do an after theme setup function, and then tell a function to run on initiate, and tell a function to run on add to initiate. Because at that point, you can go to those functions that are running, perform tasks there.
Right.
And I do it that way so that I know that I go look for that function inside the class for all of the actions that I want to have happen, versus things just all being crammed. It's like, this is actually, you could actually run this action from the initiate. You could run WP head from initiate, so you may as well just kind of group them. Yeah, like, it helps you be organized about what's going on. So yeah, filters. Filters are the hooks that WordPress launches to modify text for various types before adding it to the database or setting it to the browser screen. My example is coffee. Coffee, I mean, this is just so somebody said that to me the other day, he's like, it's like a filter, and it filters things. And I was like, yes, isn't it so weird how that just clicked? Because it says filter, and I'm like, so I mean, it's just so right there, but even still, it's sometimes hard to grasp. And I mean, if you pour hot water into a cup, you get hot water. If you pour hot water through the filter with coffee in it, you get coffee, and that happens. And so this would be the action, or the apply filters would be like, apply filters when the water is pouring down into the cup. Add function coffee filter. Filter the coffee. And so it's like, okay, water, period sign, coffee beans equals coffee. Return coffee. You know what I mean? And so, like, in the most rudimentary sense, that is basically what's happening. You're making coffee with WordPress. So, and like I said, until you find something that you can test it on and play with, it's kind of like one of those things. It's one of those mysteries. It's like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Because it's awesome, but I don't understand it. Oh, that was the last slide. That's right. And so I think that the best example of a filter is probably the content. Where is the cursor? The content, which we know for a fact is being called from here, and is called content. So I actually even name all of my things with these giant things. I name my things with my things so I know where they are. This is why I'm organized, because my terminology is really bad. So the content, here's an example of the filter. Filters will always have a parameter, because if they don't have a parameter, what are you filtering? In this instance, the filter is the content. What's coming in, you know it's coming in. I'm performing a check. I'm going to go grab a global. I'm going to grab the post global. I know that we're running inside of the post global because we're filtering the content. You can't get the content typically without having post global. But this is going to specifically say anytime the post type equals post, it's funny. But you're going to filter the content, and I want you to add this line that says, I like green jelly beans more than bread. And so then return it. So that's the filter. Basically, we're getting our hot water, we're adding the coffee to it, and then we're going to send it back to the guy. And in this instance, I'm adding 2 /ns, which is just 2 new lines. And I'll show you why here in a second. But the content has now been filtered with I like green jelly beans more than red. So what's the point of that? Why would you do that? Have you ever had a plugin that added social links to the end of your post? Or you've had a plugin that does something special to your text. It actually reads your text and says, hey, there's a link in here. There's a YouTube link in here. Let's turn it into a YouTube video. They're running a filter on your content. They're looking for that link, and they're saying, okay, we need to like take this URL and turn it into a video. There's a lot more that goes into the turning it into a video part, but that's the concept, is they're filtering it and they're returning it with new data in there. I just added some jelly beans. So this kind of like leads me into priority, and this might be too much, but I don't think it is. An action or a filter runs, there's a priority on that. Everything runs at default of 10. So let's just say set plugin wants to add social links at the end of the content. I want my filter to run before theirs does. That's priority. Priority is just basically another roadmap. Starts at 1. I don't recommend 1 unless you know that you have to go to 1. And I say that from experience. I'm so important, I'm going to put 1 on this. And then later I was like, God, I can't get ahead of it because it's 1. So yeah, plugins typically run at 10. Also WordPress runs at 10. One of the things that WordPress does is it adds WP Auto P, which takes new lines and breaks and adds breaks and paragraphs. Anytime you see 2 new lines, you're ever writing a post and you're in the HTML editor, you hit for 2 lines, you know that's going to be a paragraph. WordPress runs a filter. It says, hey, go look for 2 new lines and wrap a paragraph around it. So that's why I added 2 lines. And my function runs at a 9 versus the default of 10. So it actually gets it gets the paragraph. If for whatever reason you wanted to run it at 9, at 10.
So if you ran it at 10, it would be a crapshoot whether it would be a new paragraph or not. You really couldn't.
It won't be a paragraph. It just gets slotted in there in the end, no paragraph, because it runs after the filter that makes the paragraphs.
Oh,
Okay.
Exactly. So that's where priority comes into play. It's the most, it's a good example of understanding why priority matters. Is if you need something to happen before somebody else makes something happen, you use priority to get ahead of them. So you're basically cutting them off, stealing their copy. And it's very helpful. And I mean, when I was trying to come up with an example of priority, I built this. Or not priority, of a filter. I was like, well, I'm just going to filter the content. And I put it in there, I'm like, what the heck, there's no paragraph. I was like, oh, they must be adding the paragraphs at 10. I need to get that paragraph, so I'm going to add it at 9. And that's pretty much the way it goes. Sometimes you don't even know you need priority until you build it and you're like, oh, I need to change the priority. Like, this is weird. Or if you want to test something, you can run the filter and do a print R or however you like to do your error checks. Be like, oh, this isn't running yet. No wonder. It's happening on 20. Why is it on 20? So you can add up a lot. I don't really think there's a limit to what your priority can do. So that's filters. Sorry, I'm looking at the time. I'd rather answer some questions than continue. I got another 5-10 minutes before. What time do we actually stop? Does anybody?
Quarter till.
Quarter till? Yeah, then we should stop. So yeah, actions, filters. There's a lot to them. Once they click, it's money. You start going to the good spots with it. I think for myself, and I'll just say this before I open to questions, this is an example of something that saves me on a regular basis. I'm creating options for the database. I'm, running it from my parent theme. I have all these settings, all right? So this is what's powering the add images. I create an array, add these images, and I'm set to post on mail, and even the favicon. So let's just say this is in your parent theme. Your child theme comes in, and it's like, you know what? I'm not using what you have. I need to do some different stuff. So when the theme initiates, it's like, filter it. I want to filter that. So it goes and gets when this filter runs, my filter's already been, WordPress knows that my filter's supposed to run. So it's going to give me this array, and then I'm going to find what I want in this array, change it, and then return it back. And just say, hey, when you perform this action, I want to filter it. I want to change it so that it's what I want it to be, not what the default theme is going to be. So it's very helpful. That is like a real-world example of why you would ever use applied filters. Or how about the content? That's another good one. Say you have some text, and you're just typing some text. You can actually just put the text into a filter, say apply filters, the content, my text, and it will apply everything that happens to the content to your text, which at times that can be dangerous, but it can also be helpful. There are times where you might want it to do everything it's supposed to do, and you don't want to use the actual function of the content. There's more stuff in this code base. There are 2 other files that can be activated that will actually remove actions, because removing actions is a huge deal, and I wish I could have gotten into that, but just understanding how they happen first is definitely the starting point. Removing actions is basically the reverse of what we're doing, but it's why it's important that you make things happen at specific times. Because to remove an action, you have to know when it runs. An action has to exist in order for it to be removed. So if WordPress doesn't know it exists, and you're telling it to be removed, you say remove actions, WordPress is like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it actually is being added down here. You have to get below it in order to remove it, which is where the priority can help. You can run a remove action, priority 11, and it's like, oh, it exists, get rid of it. So that is the key. I think removing actions and filters on a plugin or a theme is the hardest thing to target. When I was doing one for Genesis, they put all their stuff in the functions file, and then they put stuff everywhere else, and nothing was running at any specific time, and it took me like 3 hours to figure out how to remove some very basic stuff. And I was just like, man, I just don't want all your junk in here. But I can't get it out because I can't figure out when to remove your action. And in the end, I had to put it at the top of the functions file. I had to put a function up there that removed actions at different places. And it was just like, wow, this should be cleaner. For somebody that's that well known in the industry, I think it's probably just legacy or whatever that term is, that it's been around for so long that it's probably hard to change for them. Because they're smart, and they know what they're doing, obviously, because they're doing really well.